Hey everybody, it's Dorr and Coach with Tactical Hyve. Today's video, we're going to be covering sling setups, a little bit of the history, the development, the do's and don'ts of why we run things the way we do. All right, while Coach is still getting set up, today's video is brought to you by Mark 7. At Tac Hyve, we do a lot of shooting. When it comes to reloading, we use the Mark 7 Revolution. We've had it for about 3 years. The thing is a beast. Make sure to check them out in the description below. And don't forget to use coupon code TACHYVE for a 5% discount at checkout. All right, let's get to the video. All right, guys, starting off, we like to go ahead and get into the history. We are going to start with the Vietnam era like we do. As far as for our particular unit, which we are going to be covering in the Vietnam era, everybody started off with what became the M16A1. This is a period correct 2-point sling. And as you can hear, it's loud. There's a lot of metal on metal. This thing was not designed for stealth or for special operations by any way, shape, or form.
So basically that sling was more at home on something like this. This M1A, of course, the M14 was vintage at the time. And, you know, when I started rolling through 3 of my 4 deployments, I was carrying something just like this. But, you know, we had this, either this sling here, but nobody ever had it attached to them. You patrol with it hanging. You know, the only time you use this thing is if you needed both hands to do something like climb up a hill or up a ladder or slide down a fast rope or rappel or something like that. That's the only time that the sling came into use.
So our guys went without them. The Vietnam conflict, for our people, they kind of shied away from traditional slings altogether. They did have improvised slings. There was an improvised method with parachute cord where they would simply attach it to the front sight post and the carry handle. And it just gave you a little something to stick your arm through because using any kind of a traditional sling, it would just get in the way and it would make noise.
I mean, you can tape these things up, you know, tape up all the metal and stuff like that on there, but you're still, you know, humidity from the jungle is going to just eat it up and rot it out. And the next thing you know, you're making noise again.
Yeah, that and they were getting wet just about the operational environment was in the water, basically. So it just was a lot of extra work. This is an example of an improvised sling. This is actually a canteen strap that's been attached with 550. Guys could and would improvise slings just like this. But for the most part, as you can see in pictures online and talking with veterans, they just simply didn't use slings. Obviously the A-dubs did. Mm-hmm. Those things were heavy, so they would come up with a method. This is a purpose-built, more modern machine gun sling. It's got the padding on it. They didn't really have stuff this nice back then, but they got away with what they could.
You made it yourself.
Yeah, you know. lot of DIY.
So once the M16A2 rolled around, part of the package that came with that was what they call the silent sling. It's basically just a piece of canvas webbing with a couple, you know, metal tri-glides on there, which you would still make noise. So you'd still tape those up really good. Yeah, but it worked better than what we had before.
Yeah, what you had before was just too busy, too much going on, just too many, you know, metal on metal, metal on plastic. Obviously, there's only people make those noises, and that's not good.
Not too many animals running around clinking like that.
So this is an actual setup how you had it.
Yeah, this is this is set up as a clone of my second gun when I got to Dam Neck. I mean, I was the first green team that actually were issued M4s, you know, in green team. But once you got to your team, I was a grenadier initially, but I didn't like taking the damn M203 off of my gun and back on again because it changed your impact, you know. So because of that, I went and got another gun, but it was one of these we had plenty of these laying around as well. So if you wanted a second gun, that's what you went with. When you're running around the woods with an AR, this is what you had. And, at that point, we started, maybe you'd run like a carabiner on your kit, and you just run this through the carabiner. So in case you fell or whatever, it would catch and would stay with you. When we started doing CQB, this is what we're rolling with. We had the MP5. So this is just a shape, but you had your 3-point sling, which is a little over-engineered. So you throw this on, and you got this little clip right here. And so if you're faster open or whatever, that kept it in nice and tight. And then once you got off the rope, then you just pop that out, and it would bust loose.
Nice and tight. And then, it's old. She's old.
There you go.
There you go. She's old. But, she works.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still had these 3-pointers. They were definitely not issued or used, but for whatever reason, we started getting our hands on these as I was coming in. It was more of a novelty. I did run it on a 10-inch AR for a while. A buddy of mine, Aaron Vaughn, God rest his soul, he actually rigged one of these up with the pad from the machine gun sling and ran a 46. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. But yeah, they're fun, for what they are, but definitely didn't stand the test of time.
And a little too much going on there.
Yeah.
Simple is better, and that's not all that simple. But it did, this did hold it nice and tight to you, because we're always going to figure we're going to get there faster open or jumping or whatever. That was going to hold it nice and tight to your body. Once you got there, you could just, when this wasn't so old and bent, it would just snap right off there, and then you had a decent sling. But
now, when you were going through training blocks in this configuration, did you guys run the SAS sling tension method?
That was an option. You could do that. But for the most part, what I did is I had this set so that all I had to do was, hit it and pull it out, and it would lock in, because, it's always better to have something on your shoulder than just pushing out against a sling. I mean, it'll work, if that's what you got, but, you'd hit the ground, pop that sucker loose, slap the buttstock open, and then get to work. But if you had to.
Yeah, so it wasn't just in the movies. Like, it was actually taught, and it was a tactic. It was known as SAS style because they made it famous during the Nimrod raid, Iranian embassy raid. Yeah. And they would not use the buttstock. They would literally use this 3-point, pull the tension out, and take their shots in fully automatic, in hostage rescue. That's just how they rolled back then.
Yeah.
And literally, that was how they did it at the time.
HR was in its infancy at that point.
And they had the giant mag lights on top. I know you guys had those before, so you really couldn't even see I don't know. My hat's off to those guys. It's pretty cool. But cool, neat piece of kit that I've gotten to mess with a little bit, but it's definitely not viable or
not using it now.
Too common anymore.
Much better stuff. So eventually we turned in our MP5s, and we got the CQBRs. So we were rolling around with this, and they went to a single point sling adapter here that you could clip into. And then guys just started rolling a simple single point sling because it was simple. You could gather it all up underneath this rubber band to stow it away. It made a lot of sense at the time. If you were gonna transition, you just got rid of this and got your pistol out. It worked really well for a long time. It does flop around a lot. So what we would end up doing is on our kit, you'd have a bungee. So when you get done, you'd shove it down here and have a bungee that you would wrap around and would kind of hold it up against your body if you were doing prisoner handling or anything like that that you needed two hands for. Fast roping as well. It all seemed to work that way. Not ideal though. It was simple and it was really, really easy. Like if you roll around in cars, not having your long gun attached to you was way more comfortable than having something attached to you. So you could just secure this up here, and then when you bailed out of the car, it was just there. Pull it out, throw it over your head, and then your gun stayed with you. We weren't, using it to shoot with or anything like that. It was just, keeping that gun on you.
My first experience with 1-points was in buds. I had no idea what it was. Never heard of it. Wasn't high speed or cool, but some guys in my class had figured it out. So at the end of buds, you have FTXs where you're doing raids and ambushes. Mm-hmm. And I went into the armory, and my gun, my M4, just had a 1-point sling on it. And I was like, what the heck is this? Like, I didn't even know. But the guys in the class were like, oh yeah, all the cool guys, all the SEAL operator, whatever, do this. You just throw it on and it's like super high speed. So we did the long foot patrol insert, the over the beach, all of that, which you of course would have wanted a 2-point for because it's way more comfortable. Mm-hmm. We did them in single point because we were so cool.
Well, for me, it made no difference because I wasn't used to using a sling anyway. Yeah. So just having that on, yeah, you're still carrying the damn gun. It's not supporting you at all, mm-hmm. but it was transparent to old guys like me.
And this is before we had grips or anything, so you couldn't do the carry handle through the grip to put it up against your chest. But anyway, yeah, that was my first introduction to 1-point. Once you got to the team, though, and that 1-point sling, by the way, was just 1-inch tubular that they had just taken a roll and cut, and I don't know. Luckily, we didn't lose any in the surf. But when we got to the team, the entire NSW, maybe, definitely the West Coast, everybody was issued the same absolute garbage sling. And the only remnant of it we could find was this, but it was an actual 2-point sling.
Yeah, that's the webbing there.
Yeah, this is the webbing of a prototype. This one actually looks nice.
I use the webbing.
Right, the webbing's fine, but the hooks were absolutely terrible. They were cockeyed, they were bent, they were completely unreliable. So it became an SOP. And granted, this is what attaches, all of this to the Navy SEAL.
Not inexpensive gear.
Yeah, like not only is this stuff incredibly expensive, not only are there like tons of protocols in place to keep accountability and make sure this stuff doesn't get lost, it's also your primary piece of equipment that you are accomplishing your job with, much less.
It's life-saving gear.
Yeah, and it's also incredibly important to have to keep yourself alive in certain situations. So all of this was being taken care of by like the bottom bargain crap sling. So we would zip tie them to the gun, and then we would tape the hooks over with rigger's tape. And that was, as far as I know, everybody was doing that. That practice continued for my first 2 cycles. And then somewhere in the late 2000s, we started getting the adjustable 2-points.
The VTACs.
Yeah, which are
now
Vickers
Tactical started. Viking Tactical. They were the first ones that I saw. Going back to that Brown thing, I was at Warcom when that came out. Yeah. And they brought it to me and they said, hey, Coach, here's your new sling. What do you think? And I looked at it and I twisted the clips and they just popped off. And I said, this is garbage. Don't buy it. And then short time later, a couple weeks, whatever it was, they brought me another one, said, hey, same company, they fixed the problem. Here, take a look at it. And I did the same thing. It snapped off as well. I said, don't buy it. So somewhere along the line, yeah, they could care less what a chief, the
end user,
yeah,
who actually knows what happens,
who'd been down range, and they didn't take that. They just went ahead and bought a crap ton of those and started handing them out. So I did what I could. Sorry, guys. Yeah. So then this one shows up. That was your.
So this is the older one. The ones we started getting were brown basic like this. They had the clips on either side, but they were higher, much higher quality, more in line with what you'd see on like an HK sling. Good spring tension. Anytime you were jumping or any kind of maritime environment, zip tying and taping clips was still SOP, and I highly suggest that be everyone's SOP because what can happen will happen. So these were a big improvement. Obviously by then we had the single and dual point configuration figured out. Everybody was running that 2-point modified some point. It's somewhere on the rail on the inside, usually left side for right-handed shooter, because you could go back and forth from 1-point to 2-point easily, Obviously, if you've got a long walk ahead of you, this is a little bit more comfortable. Just, you know, helps with the weight. With a foregrip like this, you could cinch it through. To tighten this up.
Down.
And with plates on, this thing is pretty tight. You can go hands-free, but it's still just readily available. You can get it out, up, and on target. It worked out well. And this was pretty much SOP for everybody going into the 2010s. Again, a bunch of different companies that make these, Vickers and Viking being probably the biggest. I think this one's actually made by LaRue, which was pretty common for the time.
Yeah, Blue Force, SNS.
But yeah,
I think
this is the 2-point adjustable.
And most of them still use this. This is basically off an Alice pack. That the quick adjuster for your Alice pack strap. And then lately, guys have come up with this. So this is easily adjustable, but it's a little more simple. And just got a nice soft loop. You can grab it, and it's the same loop you're grabbing to tighten or loosen. Just just move it. So again, just getting a little better.
So around the same time, we were receiving the VTAC ratchet cinch type 2-point slings. We also started getting purpose-built 1-point slings. So this one's made by SNS. It's very minimalist. You just throw it over a shoulder, however way you want to do it, and just clips in. It's minimalist, and it just gives you what you need. You cannot switch it, but it's less material. A lot of guys would rubber band these along their buttstocks. If you were working in a non-permissive environment where you had to have your primary, but you weren't like on the op, ready to go all the time, switching to something that's a little bit smaller, that's easier to stow, definitely a good idea. I've even seen guys wear the sling like on their kit, just have it on, and then the gun would be in the car, and then they pick the gun up, they'd have it with them, and then if they felt like they needed to, they could clip in. I was never a big fan of that, but just a method I saw in my time.
Guys, they figure stuff out as they go along. I mean, riding, like I said, riding around with cars, you don't want to have, slings slopping all over the place because you tend to get caught up on things. So you see all these guys with little rubber bands, little keepers back here. That's what it was for. Whether, you improvised a single point sling, from components, or you got one straight out of the box.
In an attempt to quiet things down and, keep things from snagging, they started implementing these covers. This one's like super worn out, but it did cover, at one point it was fairly tight, and it did cover the attachment point. And then also it has the retention strap built in, but it's underneath this sleeve. So nice added touch. Things were definitely getting better. You started seeing this stuff at the end of the 2000s into the 2010s.
A lot better than tape, I mean.
Yeah, we started to look a little bit more professional. Things were a little bit more thought out. But that DIY character, it was fading.
Yeah, you still got to improvise and DIY, certain things. But as things become more and more mainstream, they start looking a little bit better. I mean, our stuff worked. It just looked like crap. Yeah. And then now, see, this one's from Blue Force. So it's got the nice, quiet adjuster here. You can just grab that tab and roll it either way to adjust it. And it's got these quick adjust little socket deals going on here, right? And so you got your socket that goes on your M-lock, and then that just pops right in there and you're good to go. I'm not a big fan, just because I know things get muddy, things get dirty. This comes out, and we're not allowed to swim with these. In the SEAL teams, you can't swim with just a quick detach on there attached to your body. It has to be attached more solid. So, I mean, that's not a lot of confidence. So if this does pop out and you got mud all over you and dirt, it ain't going back in. Okay, so that becomes a bit of a pain in the ass. I'm still a big fan of the hook. Because if you got to just D-ring and a hook, you can figure out something. Even if you got to pull your shoelace off, tie a knot, you can get something in there. Whereas this one is going to be a lot harder to deal with. You're going to have to go through this thing or whatever. Now, This one's set up so that it's got the quick detach that goes back on the sling here. Okay. And then there was another one here, but I don't run a quick detach socket. Back here I got a single point. So just a loop of 550 will get you in there, because this one's not moving. This one I'll move from single to double, but this one is going to stay pinned the whole time. So this is kind of where they're going. I mean, this is a little more, if you're in law enforcement, you're not, planning on, crawling across a beach or something like that. I'm sure this will be fine. But again, from the old days, I get used to being dirty, sandy, muddy. All my gear, I kind of want to be bent that way, just so I can be prepped and gives me that little extra warm fuzzy.
All right, guys, so that was a quick down and dirty of slings used in NSW, slings that we, setups that we used during our career. There's a lot to choose from, a lot of different styles, a lot of different methodologies. The important thing is to try out what you think is going to work for you before you make that decision.
This is just the way that we've done this. There's other folks out there, other organizations that tend to do it other ways with, different 2-point setups, and there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. So this is just our take on it and a little bit of history. And if you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, and leave us some comments.